It's 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. And if you do roll call, please.
Yes. Joe Pishneri is excused. Daniel Davidson.
Here.
Cindy Koza is excused. Jonathan Hayes. Carla Berg.
Here.
Terry Dillon.
Here.
Adam Jenkins.
Here.
Brett Yancey.
Here.
And Eric Adams.
Here.
Okay. We've all received the meeting minutes. Are there any suggestions or input of any kind? Any changes? Did everybody have a chance to read them? Okay, cool, thank you. Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. We have business from the audience.
We have no online attendees and no one in attendance in person, so
I will not have to do this then. All right. Next is, from the chief.
How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good.
Great. All right, a few updates, not a lot. On May 1st is Volunteer Appreciation Day. So we are hosting lunch here in the EOC on May 1st for all of our volunteers, and that includes the members of SPAC. So hopefully some of you can come on down for a nice lunch that day. We're gonna have our new volunteers in policing, which are the folks that are doing the foot patrols downtown, of which Terry Dillon is one, and she was out doing that today. And I think it's a great program, and hopefully it can expand, not just in the downtown area, but other parts of town. But I think we're off to a great start. So thanks for your support of that. We've got 5 folks that we call kind of the fleet assistance folks. They get cars to the shop and they help do the maintenance, all that kind of stuff. They're invited. There's some neighborhood watch board folks that are invited. We have one person that volunteers with our animal control office. They're invited. And then we have another volunteer who does our graffiti abatement. The senior lock program will be there. So anyway, we just want to recognize the great work for some of the people in the community, yourselves included, on May 1st with a lunch. So if you're available, swing by for a couple minutes. If you can't stay for the whole lunch, come on by.
I'll be sending out an email for you to RSVP to soon.
And I don't know if we've officially talked about Pastor Davidson's role here at the PD in this outside of SPAC. We kind of talked about that at all? Is the
No, it's
chaplain? Okay, so Pastor Davidson is now recognized as the SPD chaplain. He works very close with our peer support program. He's been doing an amazing job of spending time with officers on the street, coming and talking to command staff, and just kind of learning the inner workings of the PD, both the patrol side, the detective side, the jail. And we're super excited for the commitment that you've shown, and we're looking forward to the future of you being here, because having a good chaplain as part of a peer support program is extremely important. I mean, it's somebody that people can reach out to at any time when they're having a tough time, talk in confidence. It's extremely valuable. And we're very selective about who we pick to do that. Having a chaplain that people connect with is critical. And I've seen some great ones, and I've seen some that are not so great, very well meaning, but not so great, that are hard to connect with. And I think we really hit a home run with you being a part of the organization in that capacity. So thank you very much for doing that.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You obviously do the department, but do you also do the inmates? That
I
part of
haven't
it?
really gotten involved with that. I met with Lieutenant Rapay the last couple of weeks, and I mean, that would be an option. I don't know if I have the bandwidth
Yeah.
to do inmates as well.
Yeah. I was
At
just
this
wondering
point.
if that included inmates.
I have as a pastor over the years,
Sure.
especially with Lane County. I've done a lot of visits over the years. But if you know someone,
No,
that
no,
need-
I don't. I was just curious as to whether it was just the department or also.
that needs the
Yes.
department. Or if there was someone connected to our congregation or a friend, I would be happy to visit. That is at the municipal jail or at Lane County.
Sure. Thank you.
And selfishly, from our perspective, we look at him as our chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
That jail chaplaincy is definitely a program that's utilized in a lot of places, and I've had some experience doing that in other areas. But again, I can't speak highly enough about the commitment, because I mean, he is running an entire congregation, which in and of itself is a full-time job in itself. And that yet now he's every week coming and spending, hours at the PD and spending his time talking to PD folks. And they put together an amazing rest stop at the church where cops can go 24/7 and get into the building, have a place to write reports and just relax. And And so that's something really nice that you, the congregation did as well. So thank you. It's our pleasure. Talk about money a little bit. So we were fortunate that in the supplemental budget request here a few weeks ago at council, they approved some extra funding for us for training. They also approved some money so we could buy some rifle rated ballistic shields, and that kind of came to light after, I think it was August last year when we had the officers that came under fire from a rifle, and we don't really have good rifle protection. So we were able to acquire funds from council. They supported us buying some rifle shields. So we'll be having those come soon. That'll be deployed in the watch command vehicles readily available. So that's awesome. And they also provided us some additional funding for what we call our crime reduction unit or crew. They're the ones you might have seen on social media that are spearheading these shoplifting and organized retail theft missions, which is what they've really been focusing on for the last few months since they were kind of created. But hopefully we can expand their work into other areas, you know, more drug investigations, stolen car investigations and things like that. But they were able to give us some money to fund more of those retail theft missions, and something that's coming too. There's, I can't remember, a few $1 million worth of grant money coming from the state for law enforcement, specifically to work organized retail theft missions. And some of our local retailers here in Springfield are a part of that statewide group that's facilitating that. So we will be seeking grant funding in partnership with some of our local businesses like Jerry's, for example, to run even more of those missions and try to nip in the bud this tremendous problem of people just walking into all these stores and filling shopping carts and walking out, you know, unchallenged. And we've had some really good luck with these missions, and hopefully it sends a message and makes an impression on folks where I'm under no illusion that we're going to solve the problem. But if we can deflect them to do their crimes in places other than Springfield because they're not confident they're gonna be able to do it here without getting caught, that's kind of our mission at this point. I know the retailers really appreciate it too. So we got some money from council, but a year and a half or so ago, we applied for what they call federal earmark funds back from DC. And we just got word here recently from Congresswoman Hoyle that she advocated for us, and we'll be receiving $200,000 of congressional earmark funds. I think it's gonna be arriving soon, and I believe we've got up to 3 years to spend it. And the ask for that was, again, specifically related to training. Training is expensive, and it's not just the cost of registering or going to the training. Every time I send a cop to a 3-day class or a 5-day class or something, well, now that's 5 days that I have to pay another cop overtime to go fill in for that cop because they're gone, and the training cost adds up very quickly. And I think in this day and age, with the expectations people have of a police department, maintaining best practices and utilizing all these cutting edge techniques and technologies and all the stuff that we have to do today, training is critical. And so I'm fortunate that council, our representatives back in DC, see the value in that and investing in the PD so we can get our people the absolute best training and deliver the best product that we can. This training funding is largely focused on de-escalation training and leveraging technology in combination with that training. And so one of the things we're going to be seeking with some of that funds is there's a bunch of different manufacturers have been sort of narrowing it down, but this VR training, you put the VR goggles on and it's pretty amazing the stuff that they can set up today. I mean, they can put the goggles on you and in the room that you're in, you know, inject all kinds of citizens and threats and scenarios and, you know, shoot scenarios, don't shoot scenarios, de-escalation scenarios. And the value of that technology, we do scenario-based training, which is critically important, but it's very labor intensive. You got to get a bunch of role players together and then you do safety checks and set it all up and coordinate it. It's very time consuming, labor intensive, super valuable. But with the VR thing, we can supplement that. Because I essentially could take you upstairs, put the goggles on you after a roll call for 20 minutes and run you through some pretty awesome scenarios. And you can do that almost on a weekly basis, monthly basis. It's not a replacement for the scenario-based stuff. That's critically important. But I think it's going to expand our ability to deliver training to the patrol folks, especially on a much more frequent and in-depth and varied basis than we've been able to in the past versus just doing your scenario-based training once a year, twice a year. I mean, in theory, you can do it once a week. And so we're super excited to be able to dive into that and see what we can come up with and have the funding to be able to get something that's really going to take us to the next level and hopefully get us farther down the road than a lot of other agencies around here. So we're looking forward to that. I think that's about all the PD updates right now.
Okay, any questions? Yeah. Business from the community, Stellar was working on that minority.
Well, we had one applicant
All right.
and his name is Josh Aguilar.
Okay.
And his interview will be this coming Monday at council.
Mhm.
So hopefully they like it because we only have one that nobody can.
That's all. right.
So, I mean, you're welcome to join council or watch it online if you'd like to. I don't anticipate having any issues with him or council finding any issues with him. So hopefully he will be in attendance at the June meeting.
Good, good. Well, that will be very pleasant to have that
Yes.
film.
Yes, it will.
Good. And speaking of council, I have been the council liaison for like 20 years, I think. Is that right? Yes. It's been a long time. Originally Brittany was also doing it with me, but would somebody else like the opportunity to attend council meetings? They're every Monday. You can do it through Zoom or attend in person. And it's very interesting. And you find out a lot of things that's going on in the city. So just putting it out there.
Other than attending the meetings, what does the role entail?
Well, if there's something really special or really, usually if they're talking about SPD, the chief is there. So, and he always brings back the information for it. So really, you don't even really have to report out because by the time our next meeting is, it's all changed, you know, so it's just it's a commitment from 5 o'clock usually in the evening until it's gone as long as 10 o'clock at times, but that's unusual. That's unusual. What?
That's pretty rare.
Yeah, unusual. But it's usually until 8 or 8:30 in here. You look like you want this.
Not like I would, but not, I can't do those hours. I can't.
Well, since anybody else? You slackers.
Chief,
All right.
Chief, are you part of that every week, every month?
I sit in every council meeting every week. Any questions that come from council about the PD come to me. So it's not as though anybody really has to answer any questions.
Right,
And you
no.
can log in via Zoom. You don't have to go to council.
Right, oh, yes, I always log in through Zoom.
I would assume the position is, or is called the council liaison in case there's something from the PD that you think that SPAC should know about or,
Yes,
Yeah.
and,
But
but
he-
usually at that
Chief
point,
covers it,
the
I'm sure.
chief covers it, if it's something specific to our bylaws or goals or something. If Joe's at the meetings here, then he covers it that way, so, you know, I'm so used to having my Monday night block, so I can continue doing it, but if somebody else would like to, that would be fun.
I'll have to look at, did the bylaws specifically say there's this position? Do you remember?
I think it did, I think it did, because that's how I think I got.
Okay, I mean, technically, Joe is our council lead.
He's our account, but yeah, but we were supposed to have one from the committee to the council as well.
Just assume that would be council.
You see anything in there, Carla?
Well, then maybe we don't even have to do it anymore.
I think that's something we could ask.
Joe, hands
Joe.
back.
Okay. Yeah,
Or Mary Bridget.
either one of those things.
Okay.
Do you want to do that or do you want me to ask them?
I can.
Okay, annual report review. This is another thing that was very fun to do, actually, see what we were tracking, how we were tracking it. What did we do, what did we not do, that we had promised that we would through next.
It's in
step
everybody's
or
packet.
So you have a copy of it. What, let me see, Carla, Cindy, myself, And Jonathan, we're on the committee this year. That's on the 2023.
But you did a great job. Yeah, it's good. Somebody you should probably have a good drive.
Thank you. So what we do with this is we submit it to city or to council. And they put us on the schedule and we go present it sometimes. Usually we just present it. We don't have to, I mean, we usually just submit it to the committee, to the council, and we don't have to go actually present it. I don't know what they'll do this year. They
This
decide.
year is supposed to be the meeting with them. We're supposed to meet
Right.
every
Every other
2
year,
years.
yeah.
So then the liaison would present it?
Well, then there isn't.
I think the
liaison.
chair presents
Same thing.
it, right?
So who would like to be the chair?
I don't think your term is up.
Oh, you sure? Pretty sure. You must have messed up enough that it should be. Okay. So before we go over this, the policies.
Did you want to talk
I
about
was
the
just-
next steps and discussion
Oh,
portion?
yeah, I guess we should do that. Thank you. I was digging out of this. So our next steps. I know you had some questions on that.
Well, and before that, before we even move on, does this have to be voted?
Yeah, we need to approve this as a final draft.
So our next steps and discussions, really, we have these are some action items for us, so, part of it is, part of why I have the goals printed out is because later we're gonna talk about, I want to talk about these. But if, looking at what we did last year, and I don't know how many people are familiar with our goals. If we look at the next steps, are these things that we want to kind of commit to? Because they are in effect action items for us. We have not really,
We've not really done these as action items, as said.
yeah,
We've had some discussions with Joe previously on this. And we've still been trying to figure out what our what we are capable of doing, what the city council will approve us doing. Like, we don't really go out and ask the community questions. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think at one of our meetings, Joe told us that that was not in our that we were not supposed to do that.
Well, I think my understanding of when Mary Bridget came and discussed your role with the council, with the committee, was you could tell community members you're part of SPAC and bring back any concerns
Right.
from community members to this committee to be voiced here.
But we don't go out and say, what do you guys think of the police department, or what do you think of this or that?
I don't remember that not being an option.
You can, it's not like a seat, you can tell people you're on SPAC,
Right.
that you meet, monthly, bi-month, quarterly. You bring concerns to the PD, the chief's at the table. I mean, so I think it's okay if people know who you are and that you are essentially a kind of a funnel for information to bring back to the PD. I think what the city can't have is you out kind of acting on behalf of the city and making statements on behalf of the city. But if people know you're a SPAC and they want to share things with you and you want to bring to the group, I think that's fine.
Or statements on behalf of SPD.
Yeah, correct. You don't speak for SPD or as an individual, you don't even speak for SPAC,
Right.
speak for SPAC. But it's fine if people know you're a member. We want people to know you're a member so they can bring things to you and then you can share them with the group and we can discuss from here.
well, part of it is, we were talking about, when we met a couple of weeks ago to go over this, was, one of the questions that was brought is, like, we look at the policies and generally we just we look at spelling errors and we go, yep, it's already been implemented. We're looking at, yeah, and moving on. And so like, what is really our role here? Like, what are we supposed to be doing? Like, and so part of it is like, should we be going out to the public and being like, what do you all think? Like, not like, I'm not representing Springfield Police Department, but as a SPAC member, like and I hope, I'm pretty sure this didn't overstep bounds, but yesterday I posted on Facebook, hey, everybody that's a Springfield resident, FYI, this committee meets tomorrow. And if you, as a community member, would like to have a question, if you have a question or a comment about Springfield Police, here's a place that you can come voice this. I just threw that out there. Part of that is because in the goals, it says SPAC will invite and encourage public input, right? So I'm like, all right, like, I think that that's what I'm supposed to do. But part of these, especially like the next steps is figuring out what are really our roles. Because, and here's, I'm gonna get maybe a little too honest, is I feel really ineffectual. I've been doing this, a year and not quite a half, but we look at policies that most of them have already been put into place. When I first started, we were talking about that, like, what do we do? And it felt like we were told, you're not allowed to say anything. And so like, until yesterday, I didn't really, unless somebody asked, like, what do I do for volunteer stuff? I'm like, oh, I'm on the Springfield Police Advisory Committee, but I never like asked people what they wanted or asked people what they thought, or because I had that fear from those first meetings where people were like, don't be careful, you don't want to speak for Springfield Police Department. And so based on the goals, I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing and that we are being as effectual as possible. So
I think, I'm pretty new to this committee, but when I look at the makeup of the committee, and obviously we're trying to fill the cultural minority community position. We have the faith-based community represented. We have neighbors at large that are represented. We have our park and rec district, our school district. I feel like by the makeup of the committee, the community is reasonably well represented. I also probably, I'm guessing that you guys probably post the minutes online somewhere under the, Springfield Police Advisory Committee. I also want to believe that there is a internal review process that you guys have for the community members, and it's probably part of your relationship with council and other things that you're being reviewed on that. So I understand, and I don't disagree with your your perspective. I just feel like given all of the different representation on here and the already kind of internal organization structure that you have set up, I think that while people may not recognize that on the surface, I think it's kind of built into the system to a degree. I just don't feel like when I come here, I have lots I could share from the school district, but I don't know what's appropriate necessarily to share from the school district, right? Because it's a relationship that we have with the police department that we're doing things that impact the school district. Yes, the community is interested. They're interested in the fights that are happening in our schools, for example. It's a big deal right now. I don't know what the expectation is for me to bring that forward. So just my two cents.
I think it's a great example. I mean, you interact with people from the PD every day.
Yeah,
So we're constantly sharing information, and your community being the schools, there's that constant flow of information back and forth. So when you come to the meeting, is it more to share what's going on in your community with this group, and in turn the community that might be watching online, which is a great to. But I think to talk about, trends and concerns that you're seeing in your community are the kind of thing the group would like to hear about. And maybe from some other communities, there's trends and concerns that I haven't heard. We hear your stuff all the time, but I haven't heard from some of these other communities. So this is a place to kind of share those trends and, hey, here's what's going on, and here's what we're hearing out there, and generate some discussions about it. Makes sense.
So maybe that's on us. Maybe that's on me to do a better job of sharing information from the school district that this committee might be interested in.
That's a great idea, because usually when we do a sharing from the committee, it's just what's happening in your neighborhood and which is also important.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to hear more about.
Yeah, because it's community-wide school district, community-wide,
And
park and rec, community-wide, faith-based,
Right.
community, you know, so I'm happy to do, I think maybe that's pointing back on us a little bit to do a better job of kind of bringing the community perspective to this,
Right.
this committee.
I think too that, so Carla, you're mentioning a couple years ago, or a year ago, when you first came, on, some of the guidance that we got through the council. That was kind of on the heels of a fairly intense, I would say comparatively intense period for the advisory committee compared to what it had been like 5 years ago. And when I first joined, meetings were much like they have been for us for the last year. Pretty pedestrian, low key, reviewing policies, and then that summer it was really got. If everybody remembers what happened this summer. So I think in that space, there was an interest within the advisory committee to step maybe a little bit more fully into kind of that public outreach function for the police department, or potentially on behalf of the police department. And I think in response to that, the direction we got through council as well as the city's attorney's office was they weren't, maybe comfortable is the right word, but that they felt city council was intended to function as that conduit for information in terms of gathering concerns or feedback in that more direct way. Whereas this body and its original intent was really to be sort of the review of policies. If there was information to be shared around what's happening with neighborhoods or vice versa, then certainly we could bring that to the meetings. But otherwise, other functions, other staff, other elected positions within the city governance really intended to serve that role, that public outreach. Right or wrong, I mean, who's to say? But I think that was what I remember hearing, and just that level of comfort from council is really where we ended up. So if that's something that should be revisited, we have an interest in, maybe re-asking that question of council, then perhaps. But I think that was the preference, is that council and chief's office and other mechanisms of the police department were meant to serve in that role from council's perspective. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone here. I think, and we came on at the same time and we got the tail end of the meetings where we had a lot of public opinion and discussions, and people brought up their concerns based on what happened in those summers during COVID. But I know that we've gone through and reviewed a lot of things that have got specifics about what the council wants us to do, and obviously what the attorney wants us to deal with, and been reviewing policies and bringing up issues. I'd like to hear more about the schools, but I feel like it needs to be more related to the Springfield Police, right, in this environment. And the same with everyone. I mean, neighborhoods, like, in my time to discuss, talk about what happened to South 70th here recently. Some kids that were, a kid that was in my kid's class that had passed away, and that's related to Springfield Police and how they handled it and what they did. Yeah, I mean, public outreach I feel like is a different thing than what we're here to do. And I know that there's been talks about having, but maybe doing a separate community or a separate council on that. I don't know that anyone's going to expect we are the ones that are going to be doing that. We're here for, I mean, that's based on my understanding of all of this. And I get what you're saying, that there's not much that we're doing, but I know obviously in the last couple of years, Crowley has gone and redone all of the policies to make it, because I know the first few we were looking at, there were a lot of things that we saw that maybe weren't so clean and clear, and then now they're just amazing, which you're right, there's probably not much we can do with them. But I'm sure the chief likes to hear any comments we have about it, regardless if it's spelling errors or if it's something else we see that doesn't sound right, and ask questions so we can make sure it makes sense to everybody.
So part of the policy thing is yes, we've been reviewing them, and some of them have been previous to implementation. But, like per the bylaws that were given to us, by city council, is that we shall assist with implementation of the long-range plan by providing input, evaluation, and feedback on goals, policies, and strategies. And when they've already been implemented and they come to us, it feels almost pointless. And that's why we're, when we're just doing spelling check, it's basically spelling checks. Every once in a while we do one that's, like, it looks like one of the ones that we're doing today is like, this needs to be looked at, and yeah. But so many of them, they've already been implemented. They're already, there's nothing that we can do other than.
But the policy, the thing with the policies, I don't get too down in the weeds on that. I mean, all of our policies exist already. They've existed for 50 years. But they're in a constant state of modification and updating constantly, it never ends. So it's not like we're ever going to bring you a book of policies that are not implemented yet, because they're all implemented. And the beauty of SPD and me being the chief of the way I can do things is we can talk about a policy today and you can point out things that we can talk about. And I mean, if I agree with what you're saying and there's some things that need to be modified or changed, I can go downstairs, I can change the policy to whatever we want, and I can sign it into effect tomorrow. So it's not that you can't do anything because the policies exist. They're in a constant state of review, and we can edit anything we want to whenever we need to. And so don't ever think just because it's already signed and dated that we can't modify it if it needs it. We're always looking to do things better.
Okay, so I guess my overarching point is, so I looked over the bylaws and we aren't meeting what the bylaws as they're written currently. And the goals that we set for ourselves in 2023, we did not meet. We did not meet because we didn't have the cultural, that position. And one of our goals was that we said we were gonna do more outreach. And then we didn't do anything. And so I don't know if we can go back to council and say, hey, council, maybe we can relook at the bylaws. And I think we as the committee, we need to maybe relook at our goals. Because if we don't have a person to do the position that we say we have a goal around, that's one thing, but also, our goal, we did not meet, we had two main goals and we didn't meet them. So I think we may want to reassess our goals so that we have a more active role.
Sure. Get that kind of direction from city council.
Also, just a question for you, Chief. I onboarded a little over a year ago, and I viewed it as an opportunity to represent the faith community, to give feedback to you and to be of service to the police department. And so I guess my question would be, what do you desire from us?
From the members of the council here.
From the committee here?
Well, what's most helpful to me is to get community feedback on the policies, because I want to be able to say, like, we have members of the community that look at these and they weigh in and we make changes as needed. That's super important to me. But I also want to, I mean, each of you represents a very specific part of this community. And so I want to hear from you what the concerns are from your respective communities that maybe haven't made it to me yet. Obviously, if it's something emerging, criminal related, you're gonna have call 911, or people are gonna pass it on already. But if you're seeing trends, in the parks, we have these constant trends of things that are going on or whatever it is. And I would love for you to pass things on to me at this meeting in a community forum. Community members can call in or show up. They can weigh in. I'm seeing it too, and so I can learn what the community needs from the PD, maybe in ways that we're not getting on like that real timely daily basis, if that makes sense.
We did used to have a lot more input.
Oh, I know, I came here right in the heat of it.
Yeah, you
There was a
did.
lot of input.
But even prior to that,
Oh.
there seemed to be a lot more input about our communities where each one of us are from. It seemed like we always had a lot to input from our neighborhoods. And we don't seem to do that much anymore.
Is that because the police department is doing so well, or is that because we're not reaching out as much?
Maybe of a combination of the two.
Well, could it be that this is just a business as usual season. I mean, let me use the word, it's a boring season.
Yeah, it could be.
I like boredom.
Could be,
it's
you know,
peaceful.
the lull of the
There's no
storm.
crisis going on,
Yeah,
and so it's gonna reflect in our meetings a little bit.
sure.
And I'll savor that,
But I,
compared to what it was a couple years ago.
right. Well, I remember, well, I think it was last meeting you brought up that there was some shootings in your neighborhood or your neighborhood was frightened. And I remember you said something about it, but that's about where it stopped. I don't know what happened after that.
I think Jamie was no.
That was the Bob Keeper Center juveniles.
Yeah, I think it was 2 meetings ago, and there was the SPD rep that was here, wasn't you, it was somebody I've never seen before, and I haven't seen him since.
Kirkpatrick.
Yeah,
Oh, it was
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yes.
And basically his response was, yep, there's more shootings happening everywhere.
Well, that's not the response that I would hope he gave specifically, but if you have, I mean, if there's something happens in the community and you come to this meeting like, hey, we had a big shooting at the park, what happened? I'll tell you what I can, and if I don't have the answers to it, I will get it and email it out to the group and we'll add it to the minutes, and so the community can see it within if it's, obviously, I'm not gonna overshare, there's an active investigation, but I want to be able to answer the questions.
So like I don't want to get into the weeds about that, but I do want to go back because now we've had yet another shooting, and it was not about that shooting specifically. It was that now we're having more seems like we're having more shootings.
And so if something that the committee would like as far as updates, we can look at maybe pulling together some level of crime data since the last meeting. Are we seeing trends? You know, if there's a perception like, oh my gosh, we're having more shootings, so we can come back and like, well, actually, we're not having more shootings. There's just been a couple high profile ones. And so trend wise, we're actually down in shootings, you know, so I can provide some context to what people are feeling out in the community. If that would be helpful, we can do something like that too. Yeah.
But we digress. So.
any other comments or concerns?
So are we going to, so we're talking about potentially changing or approving or changing these next steps in discussion? Are those listed as, I mean, I guess they're not technically listed as goals.
We wanted to just discuss the next steps and discussions, what is here. Unless there's some objection to it, will probably remain in the report as such. But it was just to bring up the next steps and discussions and what are we doing about it? What are we doing?
And in the next few meetings, we could maybe focus on, at what meeting, focus on how we're gonna bring awareness to the community about these, and maybe have a roundtable discussion about how we can get the word out there better that this is happening, so maybe we can get some more community engagement, and then maybe another meeting, we can talk about our goals again. You know,
Well, I would like to have sharing from three of you.
I think this reframes
As well
kind
as-
of, this reframes for me, and because I'm new, it reframes for me what I'll bring to this committee.
Mhm.
I have 3 kind of major topics I'll mention tonight. One of them has to do with the South 70th issue.
With what?
The South 70th issue, because it impacted the school, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, the fights, I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about kind of an issue that just came up with camping on one of our sites. It helps, this helps me reframe what I'll bring to the committee.
Thank you.
In my relationship with the Springfield Police Department. I'm not, obviously not gonna just bring, hey, we had a book fair.
Yeah. But we might be interested in that. with
So
you.
just the work that we're doing with the Springfield Police Department, because I think it does help
Yeah,
you guys
and
understand.
we become more aware of what's
Yeah.
going on out there too.
And the fact is, we got,
Pretty
we touch a lot of,
quiet
we touch a
area, so,
lot of people in this community, so.
Yeah,
I
make sure
think
you guys understand.
I mean, we get used to, it's just us in the room. I think
Yeah.
we need to speak as though we're speaking to 1,000 people that could potentially be logged on. So it's not just us that's in this room, but we need to speak to our different
Which may
communities
be-
that may or may not be logged in at a given time, or may watch the video later,
Later,
you know,
yeah.
or.
and it may encourage more people to zoom in or to come here in person too, which would be good.
So I'd like to, my suggestion would be that I like these. I just want to kind of a little bit of a redo so I understand kind of moving forward what my role is here. And this has really been really helpful.
One question about the first bullet point.
Oh,
Unclear.
that's all me. Yeah, so I just need to make sure that when there is something that you guys want follow-up, like for instance, we're talking about figuring out this council liaison position, that I respond to the whole committee with the answer, and not just, so that everybody knows that it's been answered, and that's just something I just need to remember to do. Or if there's something that the chief is supposed to follow up on, then I need to.
Right. I did have a couple of questions on that. You would answer. them.
Yeah.
They should be answered to the entire,
Right.
ask and answer.
Yes, so that's my plan going for that first bullet.
That makes sense. Wasn't sure if it was our fault.
No.
We're the ones that are.
You need to follow on
And just on that fourth topic about input, evaluation, and feedback on goals, policies, so specifically policies, I'll just give you my perspective on this. And my experience, I don't know, Eric, if you have the same experience, but when we bring a say a school district policy, I'm assuming the same for police and Grambling, when we bring a policy forward, it is in its final format. And the reason it's in its final format is because it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we've worked with legal counsel, that we've researched the laws, that we've done our due diligence, so that when we bring something forward to a committee, you can rest assured that we have prepared as best to our ability to bring it in its final format. Because I don't think it's really fair for a lay board, and I would consider us kind of a lay board, to do that level of work. And so that's just kind of my, and I'm assuming that's kind of your perspective. And it,
The policies that you have in front of you have been vetted, they've been
Yeah,
approved by the
fully vetted.
union, the city attorney's office. This is the final draft. Most of them have already been implemented. But again, we can make whatever changes we need. We're giving you a final product.
I appreciate that, because honestly, I don't think I'm in a position where I don't have the same background.
And I think that the input you provide is valuable, because the questions you may have, like, well, why does it say telegraph? Or something like that. It's something a community as a whole might be asking the same kind of question, so it's good to have that perspective from the chiefs.
Well, and part of it is that there have been a bunch of times where there was not even any grammar issues, but then looking back at the bylaws, part of my confusion was that it says we're supposed to help with implementation of them. And it's like, oh, well, if we're supposed to be helping and they've already been implemented, like. So,
Is that implementation about the long range plan?
yep,
Okay, so that's different.
okay.
So maybe we need to change
Then the
that.
So that's what I'm saying. If we
Yeah.
don't change.
And
this,
we
then
probably
this comes
should,
from city
because,
council.
Right.
I think our long range plan expired 2021.
Well, that's interesting, because that's when this was written. This is the last, so maybe it is time for city council to wonder if they'd be interested in rewriting this, if they had time.
Well, and that's definitely something when we do meet with them with this final review, we can discuss.
Anything else?
Finalized?
Okay, so do we have a motion on the report, on the annual report? Can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve the annual report.
Thank you. Second, thank you.
All in favor?
Oh, yeah, that too. Thank you.
And then the next thing for business for the committee is the subcommittee for the policy review schedule. So right now, our schedule is out through June, and we normally meet in April to pick the calendar for the next 12 months, a couple policies for every meeting. But I had suggested to Terry, instead of maybe doing a subcommittee, if I just go through, like I just went through the other day and looked at policies that are newer because of accreditation. And maybe we just start going through those, and Lieutenant Crawley told me there's a new one for ops plans. And maybe we do the ones that we know are the newest, if that is okay with the committee.
And there are a lot of policies that have been all redone as part of accreditation. There's still policies that were not required for accreditation that we just kind of pushed off to the side to get the mandatory ones done for accreditation, but we've still got some, kind of like the crime prevention one you see in front of you, that's extremely outdated. There's different terminology doesn't exist anymore, and so there's still policies out there that we have to rewrite. So that's something to consider too.
Right.
Usually those are the less critical ones, because the more
Right.
critical ones are focus of accreditation, so kind of leave it up to the committee what they want to weigh in on, but we still have some that need total reuse.
How's everybody, any discussion on that? That makes sense to everybody, and do we agree?
Of the policies that weren't redone through accreditation, do you have sort of a prioritization of which of those is sort of that next tier of importance?
We haven't categorized them that way, but it wouldn't be too difficult to do that with the ones that we have left, and then we can start putting them to the committee in that order.
Are there a lot left?
That's a good number.
Yeah.
Rough estimate?
I hesitate to give you a rough estimate, but I think probably half of our policies roughly got half redone. They were the mandatory accreditation ones. And I think a lot of agencies fall into this. Every little thing that comes up, sometimes agencies have a tendency to create a policy for it, and it might not be needed. And there's a lot of policies that I've gone through and like, this one is unnecessary, get rid of it. We want a policy manual that's slim enough that is
Right.
digestible and usable and makes sense, but we're not trying to write the how-to book to do every possible thing that a cop could encounter, because that's impossible. And I see some of that sometimes. So some of these policies that haven't been redone because at a first glance, it's like, we might get rid of this one, so let's not invest a bunch of time in redoing it. So there's gonna be some of that coming too.
So I guess my suggestion was, is instead of creating a whole 12-month calendar, that I try to find the newest policies that we're working on, maybe the same week that I'm writing the agenda. Say, these would be good for you guys to review at this next meeting, and so you get them at the same time you get the agenda. Would that work? That system work?
Fine with that. I think if they're newer policies and they've been written and kind of recently, rather than looking at those through, our lens as community members, which you probably are obviously bringing that to the table as well. That the older policies that haven't been touched yet, this one is an example. Maybe there's more value in gathering our input through that process of updating those rather than something that's pretty fresh and has already been touched. That's my.
Things like maybe there's 3 categories, just the number would be the old ones that you're going to throw away because it's
Right.
not necessary. Then there would be the middle ones where it's older, but not accredited. Accreditation.
Now am I gonna waste your time with the ones that I intend to throw away?
Yeah.
We
You're
can
right.
focus on stuff
Yeah.
that's meaningful, we need to keep.
Yeah.
So that,
So that's what I'm hearing from you.
That would, yeah. That's, but if there is a need for us to review recently developed or revised policies, then of course.
Right.
Yeah, I think that maybe there's a balance. Maybe we could do one of each a meeting, depending on.
Sure.
I think that there are some new policies that I think that you might be interested in, and to know why we're doing things the way we're doing them. So,
I have no objection to you picking them.
okay, okay.
Do we need to make a motion on that or? Okay. All right. So, what's next?
Policy review.
Policy. Picking up. So how about search and seizure?
Search and seizure, this is one that did get done because of accreditation. I can skim through it. Obviously, under the Fourth Amendment prohibits unreasonable search and seizure. So we have a policy and state laws and federal laws that dictate what we can take away from people and when. Obviously, if there's probable cause that exists, it's more likely than not that a crime occurred, and the thing that I want to take is evidence of that crime. I can seize that. Sometimes you can search things without a warrant. You hear people all the time say, hey, you have a warrant, you can't do this. Well, it's not true. There's certain things we can do without a signed warrant from a judge. If probable cause exists, we can take something, if somebody consents to us taking it, which happens all the time, like, hey, do you mind if I take this? And they sure go ahead. Exigent circumstances. I don't need to get a warrant if I know that if I don't seize this right now, it's gonna be destroyed, or we're never gonna be able to recover it again. So if I can establish the probable cause, I don't need a warrant to take that, I can just seize that. Search incident to arrest. So if I have you in custody, I can search you without a warrant for your belongings. So we can document what you've got and you can't make allegations that we took it later. It prevents you from, if we leave it on you, you can't destroy it. And if we have you in custody, so I'll leave things in your pockets that maybe you could destroy, get rid of, and for officer safety. So if I handcuff you, I'm gonna search you because I gotta make sure you have a gun or a knife or something in your back pocket. You can hurt yourself or somebody else. We can search vehicles to some extent if they're lawfully stopped. We get probable cause to search the vehicle, so if there's clearly articulable facts based on information I have, based on what I'm seeing or what I'm told. There's occasions where I can search the vehicle. Sometimes we're gonna get a warrant. There isn't an exigency. We think we need to write a warrant to get into the vehicle to ensure that we don't lose something in a hearing in court. We can write a warrant to get into a vehicle, but we don't always have to do that. We can do what's called basically an inventory search. City council's allowed us to, we're gonna tow somebody's car for something, we can do an inventory search of it. And that's largely to protect the officers too. If we're gonna tow somebody's car, and a tow truck's gonna come show up and take it to an impound lot. And then they try to allege later that there was a bag of money under the seat that's missing, we're gonna do inventory searches of cars typically before we have them towed. If I have reasonable suspicion, I can do a pat down of somebody for weapons for officer safety purposes. I can't dig deep in your pockets to find a little baggie of dope for that reason, but if I can articulate officer safety concerns, I can pat you down for weapons. So that's another way we can search and potentially seize stuff. A plain view search. So if I'm in a place where I'm legally able to be and I see something that I think is evidence of a crime, it's called plain view. If it's in plain view, I can take it. If I have to go way out of my way to peek into something and I see it there, that's not plain view. If you just happen to be someplace legally and you see something, you have the ability to take that. And obviously a search warrant. A search warrant is essentially a document that an officer or investigator writes that on paper clearly articulates their belief that there's probable cause. So more likely than not that a crime occurred. And the evidence that I'm looking for related to this crime is this. I'm looking for whatever, guns, bullets, telephones, computers, whatever the investigation is. The warrant has the specific things written in that document. And if the investigator reviews it, their supervisor reviews it, it goes to the district attorney reviews it, then it goes to a judge. If everybody in that chain agrees that, yes, we believe probable cause exists, and the judge agrees that we're at 51%, that probable cause exists to go serve a search warrant on something, whether it's a house or a bag or a car or whatever, the judge signs it, and that gives us the authority to go get into that thing, whatever it is, and search for the items that we've articulated in the warrant. So in a nutshell, that search and seizure and the different ways that we can take things from people. Any questions about that? All right. Crime prevention community outreach. This is old. It's outdated. I think it's too long. There's some terminology in here that doesn't exist anymore. But I mean, the way it's written, it talks about our community services unit. We don't really have a community services unit. We have a community outreach coordinator. It's one person whose primary function it is to engage with all the different communities of Springfield and be that kind of liaison and point person. And they can do introductions and they can facilitate events. And it's a pretty wide reaching role with a lot of latitude, but we have a community outreach coordinator. So that's one person. We talk about crime prevention in here and some of the crime prevention programs. That kind of falls to the community outreach coordinator, but I don't know how many crime prevention programs we're really doing. We go speak to different groups, but it's not like a specified crime prevention program.
I heard you a little bit ago say something about neighborhood watch. Do we still have neighborhood watch?
We do,
We
do.
How many?
not
areas?
very many.
Okay.
It's not very, I know that they
I have
have
heard
3 or 4 maybe neighborhood coordinators.
And the board has gone way down.
Yeah.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, think there's only 4 people left on the board. And I understand, having talked to the vice president, that they are disbanding as of being approved.
Oh, I had not heard that.
There I go. You know that. So,
So there's a lot of things in there that need to be changed. It refers to the Citizens Police Academy as a 10-week program. So there was a Citizens Police Academy. It was a 10-week program. It was a good program that stopped during COVID. It hasn't been restarted. Partly because when we were short-staffed, it's just very labor intensive because it's somebody that has to come in outside of work every week to provide this training for 10 weeks.
that's what SCAPA did a lot.
Yeah.
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 I think we do have a place to do better at that if there's community interest in it. I've seen very successful programs where it's not this 10-week program, but maybe it's like 8 hours on a Saturday where you bring a bunch of people in and you basically from 8 in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we kind of put them through a little mini police academy, running through scenarios. Maybe they end the day going on a couple hour ride along with somebody. I think in a lot of ways that's more impactful. But anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is the Citizen Police Academy is a 10-week program that's outlined in this policy isn't really, I don't foresee us continuing to do 10-week police academies like that. So that's something else that needs to be changed.
Just, I have heard several people ask me if you guys were going to restart that.
Good. Okay.
So there is an interest in the
Good.
community.
Okay, that's good to hear. Neighborhood Watch is mentioned in here. We're not gonna do that anymore. SCAPA is not,
Gone.
it's gone. There was some talk about that converting into a police foundation. I
Not
don't know where that-
SCAPA, but, well, kind of SCAPA, but yes, there is.
So I don't know where that's kind of landed. That'd be great. I'd love to see a police foundation. That's gonna be a grassroots community driven. or something like
It is. It has started.
that. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I can go through line by line in here, but the bottom line is, this is one that needs to be totally rewritten and shortened and clarified, and I think it's more about clarifying the duties of that community outreach coordinator.
And Carla, you did ask about statistics and I did find a spreadsheet. And it's in your packet. I printed what they've done so far for 2024. And then I printed all of 2023. Yeah, she had asked if
Yeah, we started tracking a couple of years ago. And unfortunately, this is not capturing all that we do. So the community outreach coordinator tries to document all the events we do throughout the year. But every day, there's cops that go visit some of that, and then they don't report it, and we don't document it. So this is what we know that we did. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes on all the time that unfortunately we haven't figured out the best way to document all the community engagement opportunities that every cop does all day long. So
Would it be useful or helpful or inside the scope of what we do is they started coordinating with us, like to go with them? Like if the coordinator shot out and emailed us and said, hey, I'm gonna be doing this thing. Does anybody wanna join as a SPAC member?
I don't see any harm in them maybe notifying when things are happening. I think that's more for council and the committee to determine like how is your role to devote more of your time throughout the week and the month to go to these different community events, and does that fall into what the I guess marching orders of the committee is? So
well, I could see for maybe some of the bigger events like our open house.
yeah, exactly.
Great to have you guys at our open house.
Which we do.
But some of these, I mean,
We do stuff every week. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
giving a tour to the 5th graders of the department, probably don't need to go
That would be good fun.
to.
Thank you for that.
Okay. So can you share some things with us this evening?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So I'll just start with kind of daily interaction and strong relationship we have with the police department. And I know that, there's a lot of agencies that also have strong relationships, but I feel like, I've been given the opportunity to, and not just me, we have others, given the opportunity to have access to some leadership, specifically George Crawley, who I really appreciate because while I'm respectful of his time, I also know that I have his cell phone number that I can call him, that I can say, George, listen, I got a question, or I have a thing, and, you know, I want to give you a heads up. What do you think about this? So it's more of a resource, and I really appreciate that relationship and that ability. So that is, I want to mention that. The other thing I want to mention is just the SROs. The SROs are, I can't tell you how valuable it is to have SROs in our schools. That a lot of times go unnoticed, and the relationship that they have with students. I want to thank you for the vehicle identification. Matt showed me that the other day. So now on the back, they are police vehicles, but now on the back, it says, you know, school resource officer, and it has the Springfield High School logo, the Thurston High School logo. It's really nice, and they've changed their uniform that they wear in schools. They're still obviously are very, there's police officers first. We've had that conversation, but they dress down a little bit more approachable. It's easier for a kid to come up and unless they're in full tactical gear versus, you know, they're maybe some khakis and maybe a little less a polo shirt. They still have their duty weapons. They still have their duty belts. They still have their protective vests because they can get called away at any time. So that was the early conversation we had with the chief, and it's been amazing. I will also tell you that the school resource officers are so valuable for who they are as an individual. Not every police officer could come close to being a school resource officer. We have two of what I would consider the best in the state. The relationship, their demeanor. I had another issue that I called Matt about yesterday, and his just kind of stepping back and watching his interaction was great. The issue was camping on one of our properties. I know you guys probably deal with it a lot more than we do. But it was a pretty tense conversation I was having with this mom, 2 kids, homeless, trying to explain to her that, you know, we can't have you camping on our sites. She is clearly in distress. I'm weighing the ability to interact with her, quickly view what I'm seeing, because I'm also a mandatory reporter to DHS if I suspect there's any kind of neglect or child abuse. That's when I call the school resource officer over and I say, Matt, can you help me out with this? I need to understand further, and I need you to help de-escalate this situation. He came over, we had a really good conversation. In the end, this was yesterday, in the end, the conversation was, I'm gonna give you till Friday to leave. I understand you're in a bad situation. You have 2 kids. You know, I gave her a bunch of resources for ways to transport her students to school. Even if she's homeless, we'll go get them. So it was just that interaction. But I think that the ability to have a police officer there did a couple of things. One is they know city ordinances a lot better than I do. That was really helpful. But 2, just de-escalate the situation. She was angry. She wanted to yell at somebody. Fine, if she yells at me, Matt can come in and help kind of facilitate that conversation. So just camping on our sites. 2 issues that have been pretty intense. And one of them is getting a lot of attention right now on social media, and that's fights on our campuses. What I will tell you is that the fights that are happening on our campuses have been probably portrayed a little bit more for the public to form an opinion about than the reality that is happening. And the reason that they are is because of social media. What's kind of disturbing to me is when I see videos, I see everybody with their phones out and nobody in stopping the situation, including adults. You have a couple, you know, today we had 2 middle school girls jump another middle school girl at the MX station, and nobody stepped in to stop that. It's off our property. Theoretically, you know, if we have a staff member there, we're going to do something, but we didn't have a staff member there. We have all these adults just filming this fight and nobody stepping in saying, hey, stop. Instead, then you have families getting involved in a whole thing that happened, and, you know, school resource officer shows up, police show up, they deal with it. But I wanted to, you know, just kind of portray that as a school district, we are walking a very sensitive line with kids and working with the police department on going down a discipline path versus going down a criminal path. Defining an assault can probably easily be defined regardless of age. the relationship that we have with our school resource officers is, okay, Brett, what do you want to do with this situation? You can file charges, we can put them in handcuffs, we can take them away. That's not the best route for us to do, because we want to help kids. There will be discipline, but going to Serbu is not the discipline that we would prefer. We want to rehabilitate and work with that kid. Now, there is situations where we will press charges. And it's interesting because you mentioned search and seizure. Alan, our other school resource officer, called me and he said, hey, I'm getting word that this kid, somebody might have seen something in his pocket. Can't search him unless you are willing to have him arrested. I said, okay, arrest him. That gave Alan the ability to search him. Ended up, the kid had nothing on him. We didn't end up pressing charges, but it was that relationship and that working with Alan to understand that, this is a middle school kid. Do you really want to go down the path of hooking this kid up and throwing him in a police car and hauling him down? That's not our goal. It's not the police department's goal, but those situations happen. So, working with the police department hand in hand with the fights both on campus and off campus, from a discipline perspective, we are now moving to the point where it's getting enough attention that we're going to start suspending. We actually are probably going to expel one of the youths that was in that fight today because it's a multiple offense. So, and expulsions are big decisions for the school district. That means you're kicked out of school for the year. And if it's late enough in the year, you're kicked out of school the next year. So those decisions are pretty big. And I think that that's constantly those conversations we're having around what's appropriate. Social media, as you guys all know, is horrible in a lot of situations. It can be very helpful, but it's also it's horrible because it escalates situations and the narrative changes over time. So just, mention that is something that's at the top of our mind. Our school board's talking about, we're talking about all the time as leadership team. Fights on and off campus. Fights in schools have happened since time began, but we're seeing them be a little more aggressive now than we used to see. And we're seeing more attack kind of, I'm going to meet you out back and we're going to just see who the toughest is. It's more jumping kids and doing some of that stuff. So some concern there. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about with our relationship and work with the police department was the issue that happened at South 70th with the homicide. And I won't go too far into detail, but I just kind of paint the perspective of how this thing happens with the school district. We got a call on Sunday, the day of the event, and I appreciate the call because the call is, without getting into the details, this is what happened. This is who was involved. We understand that it's an active investigation. We're not going to disclose names unless we have the authority and the permission of the police department to disclose names, because we've been down that path before and screwed up investigations. We don't want to be there again. I sat in a room with the former DA and I don't want to do that again. But the police department also understands that, is it common knowledge of the age of the victims? Or the age of,
We did a press release.
okay, so there was a child that attends one of our schools that was a victim. We knew coming into school on Monday how the school was going to be impacted by that event, because it wasn't secret. It was in a neighborhood. It was in the middle of the day, as I understand, and it's clearly it's traumatic. What I appreciate about that is that the police department's working with us, knowing that we need to have a crisis team set up. We need to have counselors set up. We need to have staff that we can remove from the school, because this child was a student of staff members. They knew her very well. They can't go on teaching throughout the day. They're experiencing trauma themselves. So we are very careful with how we are disseminating information and sharing information. And again, that was one of those situations where I called Crawley that day and I said, okay, tell me where I can go on this. And he said, here's where we're at in the investigation. You can do this, you can't do that. Thank you. That's what I needed to know. So those are just some of the ways that we're continuing to work with the police department, and it happens on a weekly basis. Clearly not some of them are to the degree that this issue was, and it was horrible. But that's, I think, from a school district perspective and from the community interest perspective, I think it's important that they understand that relationship and how much we are working with the police department, just not to catch bad guys doing bad things. It's more a thought partner on some of this stuff as well. How do we help you? How can you help us? What do we need to do here? What can't we do? So those were just some of the issues that I wanted to share from the school district's perspective. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but is that helpful?
Very, thank you.
I've got a few things. Thank you very much. That was great hearing all that. I really, the reason I kind of joined this was, a few things, protect my kids in schools. Mental illness around us is so prevalent, and I know there's very little we can do. And then the homelessness, like, I don't want people camping in my backyard or wherever, just close to Springfield does a better job than most people. So, that's stuff that I firmly believe in and don't want in our community. So I have a couple questions to you on both the social media aspect and obviously South 70th. On the social media, do you guys, I know this maybe is not a police thing, but are phones allowed to be on in schools?
So no, well, yes and no. Phones are also instructional tools if used properly. And when you get into high school, that can really be helpful because, smartphones can help with polling, research, things like that. It just came up this week where our board is probably going to start talking about in public meetings and considering banning cell phones in schools. They need to be, that is a very thin line to walk down. And the reason I say that is because you can ban phones in schools. I then reflect back last year what happened with South Eugene when they were getting those false threats. Parents knew where their kids were. If you ban cell phones in schools, parents won't know where their kids are.
Right. I mean,
That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is all of this social media and all of this, and it does have a very positive impact on discipline when you take phones away. So I think one of the areas that we'll go down is board needs to develop a policy. We need to go through that, but also there's abilities to have like locking bags in the school that the kids could have access to in an emergency, but they're just taken away at the beginning of school. In the classroom, so if you're in the classroom, something happens, you do have the access to cell phones. So all of those details, but yes.
have you looked at, I guess, the technology that I've been aware of, have no information on, but, signal blocking.
But we also have, we use our cell phones on a regular basis.
Well,
So
but if you're on
anyways,
Wi-Fi, that would
Yeah.
limit that too. But I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
that can be turned on and off. in certain
Yeah,
areas
so,
too.
so just kind of the bottom line with your question is, this is at the top now
Okay.
of the school board's topics.
Thank you. That's South 70th. I mean, that, so for me, some of my questions is related to, so I know who the family is, that my daughter goes to school with that girl or did. And we've had interactions with that mom before who, it was known that she had some mental illness. Obviously who knows what happened, but, what does the school district do in those situations when maybe they are or are not aware of a parent potentially having mental illness? And even the kid had some strange interactions too.
So I think, and I'll kind of get back to the relationship with the police department, because the police department is really good. If they have some concerns about some of these adults that have kids or don't have kids, I'm not talking to them about it, but they're talking to our counselors, they're talking to our school administrators, they're talking to other staff in the schools. But when it goes outside of the school property, day, et cetera, this was clearly a crime. And several questions go through my mind, which this person had constitutional rights, as I understand it, access to weapons. Like, you have a person in significant crisis, access to weapons. There's a different conversation, but those are the things that that go through my mind. Like, what was that situation and how did she get access to weapons? Things of that nature. But if we know that there are mental health concerns, again, it gets back to our responsibility, all public employees' responsibility as being mandatory reporters. We will make referrals to DHS or law enforcement more than anybody will ever recognize. It happens all the time. It's a kid comes in with a bruise. Teacher has a mandatory responsibility to report that to somebody. Because you don't know how a kid got a bruise on the side of their face. But we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, and if it's significant enough, we'll have our SRO come over, but a lot of times it's working with the Department of Health Service, DHS, or Child Protective Services, things like that.
My last comment, so, we had known early Monday what had happened, obviously, and we knew who it was at the time, and our daughter was already in school. And so we were already prepared to have a discussion with her once she came back, and we weren't sure what the school's gonna do, what they were gonna say. But there was an email sent out from the principal to all the parents at like pretty much right when school got out,
Yeah.
which for us wasn't a big deal, but I know for other people was, because parents are going to pick up their kid, may have no idea what happened, and they're getting in the car with their student, and the kid's like, this just happened today, and the parents like, what? You know, they had no idea, so my only recommendation was that get that email out earlier for parents to be aware of that,
There were some missteps
you know.
on how we handled it. I'll be honest with you. There was, we should have never put a name in an email.
I didn't actually realize it had a name in
I
it.
think that was a big mistake.
Oh.
And then there was we've had already briefing opportunity with the school district as well. She was in, one of the louder grades, 4th or 5th. You can have a much different conversation with 4th and 5th graders, but it's gonna impact kindergarten or 1st graders, 2nd graders. So trying to navigate that throughout the day for our counseling staff and our support staff was important. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we probably looking back on it would have done a little different.
I think, I mean, to interrupt, but with my daughter and listening to her, what happened at the school with the discussion, I don't think I had any concerns with that. And I mean, I didn't have really any concerns with it, because again, we knew, so I just know a few parents who didn't know about it,
Yeah,
and then they're
I'd be
like,
concerned as well. Well, we got the dad that hadn't offended about it.
well, of course, yes, yeah.
That was really difficult
Yeah.
to navigate, but we have to own some of those decisions we made that maybe we should have done differently.
Yeah, hopefully this isn't an issue that comes up, but.
Yeah, but no, I appreciate the questions.
On the camping, do we have any updates on? Like, it's my understanding that we're gonna figure out what laws we're gonna do when the state decides what we're gonna have to do. Something like that.
That is a very complicated, multi-layered issue. And so maybe that would be a good topic for our next meeting.
Okay.
I mean, maybe even rather than going over a
So
policy,
I
we
guess
could have a
that's-
discussion where we bring, maybe the city attorney can come and we can get all the very specific updates on camping ordinances and where we're laying at, and we can pull everything together and maybe even have a discussion specifically about that at the next meeting. If that'd be helpful.
Last time we were gonna talk about it, like we were going to talk about it, but we didn't have enough information. So if we don't really have enough information, kind of yet, I can hold off on that.
Let's, you and I will
I
we'll figure out what we can talk about at the next meeting, and if there is enough tangible stuff, maybe that should be a topic, but we'll work on it this
Okay.
week.
I agree with that being a topic. I know that that's probably the most common thing that I talk with people that I know about is what can or can't we do? And of course, well, unfortunately, got to call SPD and have them deal with it, but
Is the city ordinance even done yet?
I don't believe so. It was, it had to be adopted by. Iowa state law, but the other thing that's now in motion is that it's likely that I think the US Supreme Court has agreed to hear on appeal, review, in case that grants pass. So we're still, things could shift yet again in the near future.
And again.
and there's with that state law, there's nothing locally you guys can do,
No,
right?
well, I don't speak for the chief, but
I'm never gonna say there's nothing we can do. There are things we can do. There's places that camping is prohibited. And there's places where camping is not prohibited. So. I think we should bring the policy. We can talk very specifically about what we can do, we can't do, some of the court decisions that hamper our ability to do everything we might want to do, and just have almost a presentation on a public presentation on what we can do here at SPD related to when we get a call of somebody camping. They're on the sidewalk, they're on the street, they're in an RV, they're in a park, they're in my front yard, they're in a public park.
But
You know.
the space between the sidewalk and the street in front of my house.
Yeah, I guess I'd be
But
curious
they
to know,
haven't, but
There's-
can us community members do and can't do as well? I'd be curious to know. Loud music in your house, just blaring for 24/7, whatever, I don't. Unfortunately, I haven't had to deal with it, but I know many people who have, yeah. Again, luckily, at least in Springfield and for me, Thurston area, there's a lot less of an issue than there is close by.
But
Apparently,
city council,
It was,
I gotta give them credit. They did a really good job on that ordinance.
Yeah.
There's a lot of detail in it, but with a certain number of feet of a roadway, because it's dangerous. We've had people that are sleeping, homeless people that get run over and killed. So we don't want people within a certain amount of feet of a roadway or a waterway because some of the pollution and the stuff that goes on. And so I'm glad to see that council made an ordinance that is common sense and really puts in some protections for these different things and the people of Springfield, but still is reasonable for someone that has no place to stay.
and I'll tell you, watching Matt talk to this individual that's clearly in crisis, his approach was, here are resources available to you.
A lot.
There are a lot, and I really appreciated his approach because it wasn't, he could have taken a way different approach. But he was really kind and really genuine, and we gave her grace. She wasn't on one of our school properties. She was at Mill Street Warehouse. So we didn't have kids on. If it was at a school, we would have taken a much different approach. We're not gonna have that at school. But because she was at a property that doesn't have kids at, we had a little bit more grace that we could work with her. But Matt was, he did an amazing job. Just articulating the resources and putting responsibility on her as well. I'm not gonna solve this for you, but I'm gonna help you understand what resources are available.
One thing so we brought up the homicide that happened, and I just want to mention from the police perspective, this was a horrific crime. I don't care how long you've been doing this or what you've seen or haven't seen. What those cops saw when they got there is not something anybody should have to see. We had cops there where I know of one that was the first dead person they've ever seen on the job. They're brand new, and it was a child that had been murdered. And so to take care of our police officers, because we do see a lot of stuff day in and day out, we can't just ignore it, and dust off and go off to the next one, even though that's what we want to do. There's a cumulative effect on people that see these things year in and year out, that has an impact on your psyche and how you treat others and how you view the world and all that. So it's incumbent on us as a department to take really good care of our cops and give them all the tools they need to get through stuff like this. That's why we developed a robust peer support program. This event in particular, there's what we call a critical incident debrief happening this week for the officers that were at scene to get there, talk about it, talk through some of the challenges they've had. So I just want to touch on that. I mean, this is not something the cops should show up and take a report on to the next thing. I mean, this has a long lasting impact. I guarantee you there's police officers there that will never get the image out of their mind for the rest of their life. And this is just one thing that they went on one day. So that's just, we take these things very seriously for the health and well-being of our officers that we ask to go out and take these kind of calls day in and day out.
Good to hear.
I know that's, that I'll just echo Brad's comments about the school resource officers. Those guys are fantastic. And our rangers interact with them on a pretty regular basis, just where some of our parks are in relation to the schools and things that we have to address in collaboration with them. But yeah, 100% amazing resource in those two officers, and like you said, just who they are, as individuals. Related to that, happy to announce that we've hired our third park ranger, so expanding our program, and one of our longtime rangers is now in a supervisory role, so we're continuing to see the advancement of that program and some new training resources that we're putting together in coordination with our state park and recreation agency or representative organization. So knowing that a lot of different park recreation agencies now have park ranger or park ambassador programs, everybody's kind of doing it a little bit different. And we thought, hey, you guys can step in and create sort of a centralized, holistic training program. So we're playing a key role in that, and really hope to be able to bring the benefits of that to Springfield as we move forward. Ice storm cleanup, we're just about done, thank goodness, and kudos to Brett and his team. Really lent us a huge hand in getting some things cleaned up for us out of Barbards and some of our other parks, and even giving us the heads up on a contractor who's just done fantastic work for us. So thank you for that. Spring and summer are right around the corner, so definitely let us know if you're seeing anything out in the parks that are of concern to you. Make sure we're staying on top of those as well. unfortunately, car prowls and trailheads and other commonly visited places have been kind of an increasing and seasonal thing for us. So just know that that's on our radar too.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I want to talk to you guys about are the camera trailers. I don't know if you guys have ever explored those for the trailheads. We were talking about buying them, but I know there's some rent and lease options. That's something we should maybe partner on
That'd be
talking
great.
about that.
Yeah, which on that note, thank you very much for the letter of support that we put in with the federal funding.
Yeah, you bet.
We'll keep the fingers crossed that we're successful this time around, but that was one of the things that we asked for as part of that package.
Okay, good.
But yeah, if there's a lease option, even better.
They're a great tool. They're a great deterrent and they capture when people do bad things too. So it's very helpful.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, well, it's 7:25. If nobody else has anything, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. It was a very informative meeting, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate it.